Yahaya, you are welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, the Koro syndrome, I'm hearing about the syndrome for the first time, and you know, the Koro sounds local.
Yes. Actually, Koro is not an African word.
Okay.
Yes, it's a word that that has its roots from around the Malaysian area of the world. You know, so it's actually an Eastern, a Southeast Asia word, and you know, typically people have words to define what happens around them. So it's not, even though this syndrome is known to occur in various places around the world, but then it is commoner around China, Malaysia, Indonesia. So they actually have a word for it because it's something that is very prevalent amongst them. Exactly. Of course, Koro sounds as if it's an African thing, too, or even a Nigerian word. But it's actually a Malaysian word to define that syndrome where the genitals retract into the body.
Okay, let's start from the beginning. What brought about the Koro syndrome?
Yes. You see, Koro syndrome happens to be among a group of disorders that we call culture-bound syndromes, because the expression of this problem is usually tainted by cultural beliefs. Okay, so I'm a psychiatrist, you know, so we actually deal with mental disorders, and but then we also understand that the way and manner individuals express their experience of illness is usually tainted or affected by their cultural beliefs. Exactly. So you could have a situation, not even Koro now, where someone has beliefs that he's being that people are coming after his life. In Africa here, we can say it's witchcraft. But somebody in the US will say it is CIA, you know, or FBI that are monitoring him. You know, so how the core pathology is, I'm afraid, I feel insecure.
Yes.
But how I explain that is usually is clouded or colored by my own cultural beliefs. You know, so that's how. But the underlying pathology is the same for everybody. But it's our own understanding and explanation of it that has cultural undertones.
Okay.
Likewise, this Koro syndrome.
Yeah. Over the years, even in Africa and indeed in Nigeria, we've seen cases of this Koro syndrome, otherwise known as genital retraction syndrome.
Yes.
And most at times, it has always been alluded to a certain individual who the victim may have come into contact with shortly before he experiences that syndrome.
Yes. You see, the interesting thing is, you know, because of our own maybe beliefs in witchcraft, in diabolical means, so we have that understanding or general belief that people have the power or the ability to affect our person, you know, using whatever means, maybe by touching or by even laying a curse. You know, those are subliminal cultural beliefs that are there. So now, when this person experiences this genital retraction, it's easy for him to quickly understand that, oh, is the last person that come in contact with me that must have been responsible for what I am experiencing currently. You know, so that is I think that's the underlying mechanism. But however, what really is Koro syndrome, or what is genital retraction syndrome? You know, we have come to understand that it's a phenomenon, really, whereby people experience a shortening or a reduction in the size of their genitals. You know, some even say that it's as if their genital is shrinking into their body, or in fact, the outrageous one will say that it completely disappeared. You know, but then the interesting thing is, when you examine these individuals, the genitals are still there. The genitals are not abnormal in any way. We all know that the human genital, it's not just men alone, female,
it's even the next question I had wanted to ask you, whether it's only peculiar to men.
But the physiology, that is to say how the body works, is that in cold weather, there is a general shortening or reduction in the size of man's genitals. Okay, so all men can relate to this. Okay, likewise, the nipples in women in very cold weather there is a tendency for it to shrink. Now, but then when there is heightened anxiety, for whatever reason, if you notice, most of these things happen when there is political tension. If you know that maybe there is an election going on around, or life is generally difficult for people, you know, those are the times that these things
social
come up.
uprising can cause that.
Exactly, when there is social uprising, so people are in a state of heightened awareness, you know. So, and when you are anxious, of course, in anxiety states, the male penis generally shrinks, you know. So, but then how does the layman understand this shrinkage? You know, he doesn't know. He believes that is the truth. But then we've seen people who have ended up in hospitals, whereas by the time you examine them, they are fine. You know. So now, how do you compensate the unfortunate victim? I still remember, I think sometime early last year, there was a woman somewhere in Niger State here. It was on the news, you know. Where she was the one who was accused, and she too actually said yes, it's true that this is the you know the mental health is a very funny phenomenon. That's what we call mass delusion. Everybody believes in it. So the victim says my genital has been stolen. The person who was accused, in order to save himself, may say, okay, yes, it's true, I'm going to bring it back. Because, you know, knowing fully well that, well, he or she has not done anything, but then if you say you are going to bring it back, they will spare you.
The fear of the future.
They will wait that, okay, by the time she returns it, before we punish, so it buys you time, agreeing that, yes, indeed, I have taken it. Give me some time, let me return it. Hopefully, before that happens, maybe the police will come and then, take you into custody. You know, so those are the kind of things that we see in this syndrome. But then, does the person's penis really disappear or shrink significantly? No. As far as we know, medically, you know, it's just a normal phenomenon in response to tense or anxiety situations. Then again, does it mean that the person does not have a problem with the penis? It doesn't mean that sometimes people actually do have medical problems where the penis has some, maybe there is what we call, I will remember, when I remember I'll mention it, it's like an inflammation of the penile shaft where due to healing, it contracts. So it makes the penis physically short. So that kind of person is already aware that I have a defect, you know. So he's moving around without self-consciousness. So now heightened with anxiety, the next thing is that, yes, this man has now worsened my situation by making my penis even shrink further than what it already. Yes, it's called Peyronie's disease. What I was trying to remember exactly. So yes, there are situations where individuals have problems with the penis naturally, you know, which may be corrected surgically. But then because of that underlying problem, they are already in a state of heightened anxiety, which makes them prone to believing that their genitals has been stolen.
Okay, let's go back a little bit back to the issue of cultural belief, which you have earlier stated. How can people tend to detach cultural belief from this Koro syndrome, looking at the fact that this has brought a lot of psychological discomfort and even have severed relationship among people of the same community?
Yes.
Sometimes you see people living together for years, and then suddenly a neighbor's child is accused of doing that, while nobody had ever seen or suspected the child in such kind of situation. Exactly. But suddenly somebody from somewhere coming to accuse him of such thing.
Beautiful. You see, I think that's actually the essence of this session we are having, because we believe that when there is community awareness, when people get the real information, when the community is informed, then there is a possibility that they may have what we call cognitive restructuring. Their previous belief becomes shaken that, okay, maybe let's listen to these medical people. They have an explanation for what we have been thinking is a problem. You know, so yes, community awareness in terms of mental health issues is very, very paramount, and that's what the EMD is trying to achieve with having us have these programs. Because when people are aware, when they have the correct information, they are likely to take the right decisions to seek for help when issues do arise. Okay, in our own setting, there is no doubt about the fact that irrespective of people's educational level, their level of understanding of mental health issues is below par. I had conducted a research like that in Zaria then. In the Samaru university community, where, I mean, the result, I mean, the study was conducted, people with PhD, you know, because a lot of education people are there. Exactly, you realize that their understanding of the causes of mental health, their level of education has nothing to do about it. My own interaction with clients in Mina tells me the same thing. You see highly educated persons coming out and tell you, Iskani or Aljanuni or something. And this is something that a few tablets here and there, I mean, will solve. So, but then when people do not know or understand that these are medical problems, they will just stick to the old traditional beliefs, whereas the patient is there suffering.
And then another person is being victimized.
Exactly, yes, unfortunately so,
You know, most of the times in our society, even the older women, especially in villages, and sometimes even within the neighborhood, readily becomes victims. Because she has grown old, they assume that she's a witch, and therefore some calamities are being...
Let me paint a typical scenario of what you have just said. You know, how, I mean, how we explain it in psychiatric terms. Women of advanced age are more likely to develop depression. Okay? You're an old woman, 60, 70, you're a grandmother, possibly a great-grandmother. Okay? Now, the typical scenario, like you just painted down, is maybe an old woman living alone in the village, or maybe in the town, wherever, but then it's an old woman. Now, when she develops depression, what happens in depression is that the person has low mood, he's sad, I mean, he or she is sad, there's low energy, there's loss of interest. As it becomes severe, the person even starts wishing to die. Now, then there's a strong feeling of guilt, you know, inordinate guilt. When things, unfortunate things or negative happens in the society, that patient wrongfully attributes it to themselves. It's because I'm a bad person. That's why all these things are happening. So when such a woman is being accused of having maybe killed somebody, she will immediately confess that it is true. Why? Because that her depressed state of mind makes her to take responsibility for every negative things that are happening. So now she's isolated, she's living alone, she's already stigmatized, she's in a depressed state of mind. When these things happen, because of her own state of mind, she says, yes, I am the one responsible. You know, she has nothing to do with it. But then that state of mind makes her to readily say, yes, that's that confession that will say, she has confessed. And of course, jungle justice follows, you know. And of course, when the older you get, the higher the tendency that your own offspring might die before you. If you are 80, 70, 80, 90, and you have a child who is 70 and dies, the next is that they come to start thinking that why you are still alive and all your children are dying, you must be a witch. If you now develop, you are also feeling guilty that why am I still alive and all my kids are dying before me. It's not a good psychological state to be in. But then the depressed person would readily, you know, agree to being responsible. And of course, that is the so-called confession that the community members will say, she has confessed, so let's lynch her, you know. So it's an unfortunate happening, really.
Yeah. Okay, doctor, let's look at it, relating it, this Koro syndrome, with the issue of drug abuse.
Okay.
You find out that some drug abusers tend to have that distorted sometimes